All right. Happy Sunday to everybody. Thank you very much for being a part of the show. Was not expecting to be doing a show today, but it's kind of good. Some good news here. I'm excited about what the Lakers were able to do. So certainly a little bit of a surprise of a show, but at the same time, I think for the right reasons. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you for hanging out. We're gonna go as long as we need to freaking go. Lakers just make it. Lakers have made a trade. It feels like it's been probably a year and a half, a little bit over a year and a half. So it's not like this happens all the time. The fact that a trade did go down is obviously a big deal. So we're going to get into it. There's a few different things that I want to get into. I'm coming on about a half hour earlier than my original plan. I was going to come on at 3, decided, you know what, let me come on at 2:30, kind of give my thoughts, my opinion, take some of your questions and everything else. And then as we keep this thing rolling, I'm going to have Mark Medina, who's been a longtime NBA writer. He's going to join me at 3:00. So we'll get our thoughts in, and then we'll get Mark Medina to join us as well. All right, let's get started here. Damn, the hell just happened here? This is not something we had the Laker game last night, and we got a chance to obviously react to another win for the Lakers. They've won 6 of their last 8 games. They're 18-13 in the Western Conference. We know what they've been doing. They're 5th place, or 18-13 overall, 5th place in the Western Conference. We know what the Lakers have been doing. But one of the things that I keep emphasizing here, and I think a lot of Laker fans agree, they just don't have enough talent. I don't think the Lakers have enough talent to truly compete. Shams put out the tweet. This was about 4 hours ago or so. I couldn't go live. I had already scheduled. I was taking the train from San Diego back up to LA, so I just wasn't going to be able to do a live show. So just got back, got set up, and this is, the original tweet that was out there. Breaking: the Lakers have agreed on a trade sending D'Angelo Russell, Maxwell Lewis, and 3 second-round picks to the Brooklyn Nets for Dorian Finney-Smith and Shake Milton. Sources tell ESPN. That's what Shams had put out there. There's a few angles I want to take on this. I want to talk about the players that are coming to the Lakers. I want to talk about D'Angelo Russell, obviously his move away from the Lakers. I want to spend some time why I think this is so important because of how early we are before the trade deadline. Trade deadline's not till February 6th. So this is one of the earlier moves to go down. It gives the Lakers a ton of flexibility. It gives the Lakers a ton of time to continue to improve their roster, because I don't think if you think just, hey, this is the move, they're good to go now. I don't think that's the case, but I do think this definitely makes the Lakers better. So let's start off with this as we, get things rolling here. The one thing that I want to talk about first, let's figure out Dorian Finney-Smith. I'm going to talk about the guys coming in first, and then I'll talk about D'Angelo Russell on his own, and then I'll talk about the front office and what else needs to be done. So let's go with Dorian Finney-Smith first. Here are my thoughts on him. And we've got a chance to talk about different players rumored around the Lakers. We've heard the names. Bruce Brown has been on that list. Guys like Jeremy Grant have been on that list. I'm trying to think of guys that are maybe more wing players, guard players, guys that can play both sides. Dorian Finney-Smith, every time his name came up, it's like, yeah, that guy that's the type of player you want on a playoff caliber team. That's the type of player that you want. And then, I'm not watching Brooklyn Nets games every night, so I just remember Dorian Finney-Smith predominantly when he was with the Dallas Mavericks. Then you start looking closer about what Dorian Finney-Smith is doing right now in the league and in the NBA in Brooklyn. Do you guys know that he's shooting almost 44% from the three-point line so far this year? 44% from three. I think people know him as a 3-and-D player, a guy that's going to bring incredible toughness to this Lakers team. I think, I've said this a couple times over these last couple of weeks. I spent a little time talking about, hey, I think we're starting to figure out what the Lakers' identity is. I think we're starting to understand, okay, what's the blueprint for the Lakers? The blueprint for the Lakers, the reason why they've been able to change the season around when they went on that 3-8 stretch, the reason why things have changed, hell, I was talking about a lot yesterday against Sacramento. The reason why the Kings can't be a serious team, they can't get stops. The identity of this Lakers team is they've been able to get defensive stops. They've been able to all of a sudden become a team that even if their three-point shooting's not working, even if other areas of their game offensively is not where they need it to be, Well, they can win games because of their defense. And it doesn't matter if there's a squad that they're playing like Sacramento that can drop 125 or 130 in a night. They can get stops and win that game. And they've done that. And they've been doing that. They did it against the Memphis Grizzlies. They obviously did it against the Sacramento Kings over whatever. They played 3 games over this last week and a half or so. Did they lose to the Pistons? Sure, they did lose to Detroit. But they've won 6 of their last 8 games. I think they're trending in the right direction. And all Dorian Finney-Smith does, in my opinion, is solidify how the Lakers want to win basketball games. They want to win basketball games by being a team. And this is, this certainly works come playoff time. In the playoffs, I've talked about this when I make a comp in football. You know what I want in the NFL playoffs if I'm rooting for a team? I want to be able to run the ball, and I want to be able to play defense. You know what I want in baseball when you get to the postseason? I want a team that's solid defensively and has some of the premier pitching out there. Okay, that's cool that my team can go get 5-6 runs, but give me the aces and give me the bullpen, because that's how you win in the playoffs. So I think Dorian Finney-Smith fits a mold for the Lakers. And in today's NBA, where he's going to be a defensive stopper, he can play multiple positions. He doesn't just have to play the 3. He can also play the 4. In some extreme cases, can he play the 5? I'm not recommending that he does that. But the point is that the guy's not going to get pushed around. He's somebody that pushes others around. He's a playoff-style winner. And by the way, he shoots over 40% from the three-point line, 43%, 44%, right in that range. Playoff experience. Again, I'm not trying to pretend to anybody that I'm watching the Brooklyn Nets and I watched every game from Dorian Finney-Smith, but as I was doing some research here, coming on here, it's like, wait a minute, I've seen this guy in the playoffs. How many playoff games has he had? So he's played a total of 35 playoff games, so he's got a little bit of experience from there as well. I can't find a negative of bringing Dorian Finney-Smith to the Los Angeles Lakers. Again, I'll say it. They didn't go out there. Think about how polar opposite players D'Angelo Russell is and Dorian Finney-Smith. Now, there's some advantages to having D'Angelo Russell on your team, but he's more finesse. He's more, offensive driven, really just not a defensive presence. He's a player that has the capability on any given night. He could drop 25. I don't think Dorian Finney-Smith's going to do that. But what is your team? What's the identity you want on your team? Dorian Finney-Smith, 100%, I think fits the identity JJ Redick is trying to have on this team. And I'm really excited to have him on the squad, especially as you look big picture here and potentially what's that going to look like come playoff time. What kind of team would the Lakers have under, obviously in those regards. So that's Dorian Finney-Smith right there. Let me move on, and I'll get some of your comments. Don't worry, I'll get to them. I'll do my best. And like I said, I got there's no expiration date on today's show. We'll just go as long as we need to go. We'll talk a lot of Lakers basketball. Mark Medina coming up in about 20 minutes. We'll get his thoughts. And then I want to spend some time reading your guys' comments and everything else. Okay, let's keep going here. So Dorian Finney-Smith, 3-and-D, toughness, some playoff experience, and the dude right now is shooting 43, 44%. Shake Milton is also part of the deal. That's another guard. And I think for the Lakers, because, you're obviously losing D'Angelo Russell, you're trying to figure out, all right, is there a guard that we can get as well? Here's Shake Milton, and I'm going to give you guys some stats for Shake Milton. Again, it's with Brooklyn. So make with this what you want. What those two players were playing, the environment they were playing in every single night for Brooklyn compared to what happens when you join the Los Angeles Lakers and LeBron James and most televised games of any team in the National Basketball Association, nationally televised games. Okay, so here's Shake Milton. He's averaging in his last 15 games, 11 points, 3 assists, a little over 2 rebounds, and about 24 and a half minutes a game. The question is going to be for Shake Milton is, can he get opportunities? Kind of a streaky guy, a player that can go out there and get you buckets. He's going to be a shooting guard primarily. The question is going to be with him is, how are the Lakers going to figure out, okay, is it Gabe Vincent that comes in? What are they going to do with Dalton Connect? And how does Shake Milton kind of fit into that mold? Now, I'll get into the Lakers still need to make more moves, so maybe there will be more opportunities for Shake Milton. but at least it's good to know that over his last 15 games, he's had some success for the Brooklyn Nets. He also had a 16-point, 12-assist double-double against the Spurs on Friday. So, again, what is his role going to be for the Lakers? I'm not sure. The Lakers didn't go make this move because of Shake Milton, but is he going to get some opportunities? Potentially. But is he going to have to be, fighting for playing time versus guys like Gabe Vincent, Austin Reeves, Max Christie, Dalton Connect, Cam Reddish? There's going to be a lot of guys that are probably fighting for some of those minutes. That gives you a little bit of idea about Shake Milton. The only other thing I will point out as well, because I think for me, it's one of the things I tend to look at. What kind of experience do these players have in the playoffs? 35 games for Dorian Finney-Smith, 38 games as far as playoff experience goes for Shake Milton. All right, so that gives you guys an idea on both of the players that are coming to the Lakers. The three second rounders that the Lakers gave up, I really don't care. I don't think it's a big deal. I was reading a good article in the LA Times, and it was talking about how Memphis was looking to potentially trade a protected first-round pick in order to get Dorian Finney-Smith. They didn't do it. Whatever the hell that Rob Pelinka and the Lakers front office came up with and said, all right, we got to act on this right now. They did it. They did stop a team like the Memphis Grizzlies. Let me find the exact there was a good quote in here. Let me find it. This was from Dan Wokey of the LA Times that was writing the article. I want to make sure that I find it right because I think it is important to talk about, obviously if the Lakers were able to make this move. The Lakers managed to make the deal to the surprise of multiple rival NBA executives without including a first-round pick. Memphis, according to people with knowledge of the talks, was discussing a deal that included a protected first-round pick that would have landed them Finney-Smith before the Lakers swooped in to close the deal. So that gives everybody just a quick idea right there. To not give up a first-rounder, to have all this, to still have assets to go out there to improve the roster, which I'm going to get into in just a second, I think is obviously very key. It's very important. And the fact that you were able to do it before the Memphis Grizzlies were able to jump in there, kudos to Rob Pelinka, which I'm going to get to in just a second. Those were the players that came in. These are the players that are leaving. D'Angelo Russell is leaving the Los Angeles Lakers. All right. I've said this before, and I'm not saying this just right now, but I've said this before. If the Lakers traded away D'Angelo Russell, I probably wasn't going to lose any sleep over it. Tonight, when I go to bed, I don't think I'm going to be losing sleep over the Lakers losing D'Angelo Russell. Now, let me tell you what I mean by that. All right. That doesn't mean that D'Angelo Russell did not have success with the Lakers. D'Lo last year made the most threes in Lakers franchise history with 226. D'Lo's had moments, even in the playoffs where the Lakers got to the Western Conference Finals. I know he failed against the Denver Nuggets, but he had some games and some performances against Memphis. He had some games and some performances against the Golden State Warriors in that run a couple years ago. It's not like D'Lo was trash for the Lakers. He wasn't. He was a player that I think is wildly inconsistent, has, unbelievable skill, but there's areas of his game that it just clearly wasn't going to work for the Lakers. If you're trying, what's the goal? If the goal this year is, let's go compete for an NBA championship because LeBron's about to turn 40. You're the Lakers. You have Anthony Davis. You got other players on this roster that you at least feel you can make a little bit of noise with. Hypothetically speaking, with D'Lo, is that really the guy that you want to go to war with in the postseason? And I think his postseason play told you, no, that's not the player that, you identify as saying that's the guy that we're going to go make a long playoff run with. This year, D'Angelo Russell, he's not having a good year. 12 points a game, 26 minutes a game, 3-point shooting down from 41.5% last year down to 33.3% this season. Final year of his contract. I think D'Lo was the clear, hey, if they're going to make a move, D'Lo's going to be the one that goes. And obviously for the Brooklyn Nets, I'm sure they're looking at this and saying it's an expiring contract. Let's stock up some second rounders. Dorian Finney-Smith is probably walking away at the end of the season anyways because he's got a player option that has value in the NBA. So I think overall, when you look at D'Angelo Russell specifically, he clearly was not a part of the future for the Lakers. Since he got to LA in his second stint, from last year's trade deadline, from the summer all the way to training camp, the entire conversation has been not, hey, D'Lo's a big part of the future. It's what can you trade for with D'Angelo Russell? So let this man move on too. Let me say this as well. And I actually genuinely believe this. I feel for the guy. Let me tell you why I feel for the guy. How many different teams has this guy been on? There has not been one franchise so far in the NBA that said, you are one of our building blocks moving forward. Or, hey, we just want you here. Even if you're the fourth, fifth best player, you're coming off the bench, you're starting, whatever the case is, we believe in you. I don't really feel like he's ever had that. And I imagine you coming to work every single day. And every single day that you come to work, the conversation is, hey, you know that the company doesn't believe in you, right? It's like, all right, well, that's going to be a little bit difficult to get motivated. Hey, you do understand that you had a really, really good week this week. You know the company still doesn't believe in you. And the moment that they can get rid of you, they're going to get rid of you. You understand that, right? That was basically D'Angelo Russell for a year and a half. So, you know, I hope this man can find a home in the league. I remember it was about a couple weeks ago, I had Jake Fisher on, who does some work with the Stein line. Really, really good there. They got great work that they're doing over there, part of Mark Stein's network. And he had said to me something to the effect, I was trying to figure out what is his value in the offseason when his contract expired. And it's like not much value there at all. So it's going to be a struggle for D'Angelo Russell to kind of prove himself moving forward. But this is not a business where, you know, obviously the front office and the Los Angeles Lakers and Rob Pelinka, the way they got to do business is very simple. What's in the best interest of the team, and whatever it is, you know, you move on. That's for D'Lo to figure out. That's not up to the Lakers to figure out. And by the way, I wish people would feel bad for me, and I had $18 million coming in a year. The guy will be fine, but I'm just talking about obviously from a basketball perspective. So what the Lakers gave out in D'Angelo Russell versus what they got in Dorian Finney-Smith, I got nothing but love, and I'm going to give my kudos to Rob Pelinka in the front office. Now this is going to lead me to the front office. Don't worry, by the way, guys. I know if I haven't got to you guys yet, I will get to you. I promise I will get to you, and we will go as long as we need to go today. So let's keep rolling here. The timing of the trade. Let's just now talk about the timing of the trade. The date, Sunday, December 29th. Do you know when the trade deadline is? It's February 6th. We got a lot of time until the trade deadline hits, which means you really, really got to love that the front office didn't wait. You know, one of my frustrations with this front office the last year and a half, it's listening to, you can't buy a home that's not for sale. And you know what? It's really hard to make moves right now. I'm looking around. I'm like, Rob, other teams are making moves. What are you talking about? Big time moves are going down. Karl Anthony Towns got traded. Pascal Siakam. Who else am I missing here? There's a number of trades that have gone down over the course of the last year and a half. I mean, the Dallas Mavericks, the trade that they made last trade deadline catapulted them, I think, to the NBA Finals. So teams are making moves. We just can't have any excuses here. Now, if you want to say the timing, and if you want to say the Lakers were holding on to some of these assets because they just thought, hey, even if we made a move last year, it wasn't going to improve. It wasn't going to really drastically improve our chances of making a run. Or even if you want to make a case in the summer and say, we're not going to just make a move in the summer to make a move. Either it's the right move or it's not. Well, then I'll leave Rob Pelinka alone. The only thing that we couldn't have happen is pretending that being in the middle was going to be okay for the Lakers. That pretending that, oh, yeah, this team's all in, yet they're not going all in. That was going to be a problem. I think it was clear to everybody that it was impossible to think that the Lakers were going to go to the trade deadline and not make a move. By the way, if they were going to do that, then you might as well start selling off your assets and start the rebuild. They didn't do that. Maybe it has to do with the Lakers are starting to play good ball. They're 6-2 over their last eight games. All of a sudden, they do have an identity of being a team on defense or a team that can rely on the defensive side. So the timing of the trade, I absolutely love by Rob Pelinka because it gives him time to go make another move. This cannot be the final roster. This cannot be the only trade that the Lakers make. And I don't believe it's going to be. Just like I didn't believe that the Lakers were not going to make a move because it was just impossible to watch this team and say, yep, I'm sure LeBron and Anthony Davis are going to be really happy with this once the trade deadline is over. It's December 29th. Now you can say, did the roster just get better on Sunday, December 29th? The answer is yes, in my opinion. Did they get somebody that I think gives them a little bit more toughness, a little grittier, and also a really good three-point shooter? Yes, I do believe that. Are there going to be some things they miss from D'Lo? Sure. But I don't think I'm going to miss him for very long, and I don't think a lot of Laker fans are going to miss him for very long as well. Again, it's all about fit. It's all about what your identity is, and I think Dorian Finney-Smith fits much more into that identity. So now the question is going to be, what do the Lakers do from here? He can't be done. I'm talking about Rob Pelinka. If the goal is to compete for a championship, then he's going to have to do more. He still has his first rounders. He still has players. I mean, if you want to look at specific contracts, Rui Hachimura, Gabe Vincent, I think the more that we see a player like Max Christie, the less we ever want to see him in a deal. But you got some players still that can kind of help total if you're trying to target a certain player. And obviously those first rounders are what's going to be most coveted from any team out there, or your young pieces. They're going to want guys like Austin Reeves if you want a big major player. They're going to want guys like Max Christie or Dalton Connect because they're young and they're cheap. They're going to want players like that. So the question is now, what do the Lakers do from here? And what's the next move? What's the next domino that falls to make sure that the Lakers put themselves in a position where by the time you do get to February 6th, we all feel comfortable about the roster that they have and at least just saying they can beat any team in the West. They can go up against any team in the Western Conference. Boston is in a class of its own. They'll continue to be until, in my opinion, they lose in the playoffs. I think they'll, obviously deal with this season as it goes. But the player you brought in, I like. The player that went out, I'm not too worried about. And the timing of when you made this trade gives you a lot of flexibility and opportunity to make some moves as well. I'm going to read a quick tweet here that I saw a little bit earlier. And this was coming from, let's see if I have it up here. This was coming from Bobby Marks, who does a really good job covering the NBA. Here's what Bobby Marks said. The Lakers got much needed wing depth and flexibility below the second apron. They're $3.5 million below the second apron, and he kind of breaks down the numbers. I guess this also gives the Lakers some great flexibility moving forward to potentially, obviously put together another deal, and that's going to be the name of the game, I think, for the Lakers. But I do think this is a tremendous start to the trade deadline for the Lakers, and we're going to see where it goes from here. Okay, let me get to a couple of these, and Mark Medina is going to join us in about 7 minutes or so. He's going to join at 3 o'clock. All right, here's what we got. DFS needs to start along with Max as your wing stoppers. Rui off the bench as our sixth man. Can be the first sub off the bench when Braun goes out to keep size. This is going to be a fascinating conversation. And I think it's also going to give JJ Redick some remarkable flexibility. I don't mind going big and going Austin Reeves, Dorian Finney-Smith, Rui Hachimura, LeBron James, and Anthony Davis. I don't mind that. Okay, you want to play it the other way. Go Austin Reeves. I think Dorian Finney-Smith is going to start, by the way. We'll see how it eventually, pans out. But he's a good enough player and a good enough shooter where he should be in the starting lineup. And it's not one of those, we got to give up offense for defense, or we got to give up defense for offense. That's not going to be the case for the Lakers with a player like Dorian Finney-Smith. So, Brandon, I think it's a great observation. Whatever they end up doing, I will tell you this, and this is the beauty, I think, of JJ Redick. If it ain't working, he's going to try something different. D'Lo in the starting lineup, D'Lo to the bench. Max Christie in the starting lineup, Max Christie to the bench, Max Christie in the starting lineup, Dalton Connect, bench, starting lineup, guys getting minutes, less minutes, whatever the case is. He's going to figure out, okay, what works here. By the way, don't forget, too, you're going to get another great defensive player coming in with Jared Vanderbilt when he does. How does he fit in the mold? You might have too much, to be honest with you. I think that now you really got to go get another big that you can depend on with some of this extra weight that you have in some of these positions. AR, thank you for the super, brother. I appreciate you. Slee, happy Sunday. I say D-Lo, thank you. And I also say, Rob, nice move. Keep on coming. I'm finally, thank you, Slee, for the much-needed show today. Yeah, we had to make it happen. I got a show coming up tomorrow. It's at 8 a.m. We're going to continue to have the conversation. I already had scheduled. Friday didn't work out with Trev and I, but Trev and I are going to hook up tomorrow morning right at the start of the show, probably a few minutes in. So I couldn't wait till tomorrow morning. Are you kidding me? What the hell's going on here? It's not like trades are going down in the NBA all the time, and it's certainly not involving the Lakers. So, AR, thank you for the super, brother. I appreciate it. All right, let's see what happens here. What happens with Cam, especially because of JJ 9-man rotation? I think this is what's going to happen. And I'll go back to what I said a little bit earlier about it's going to come down to what makes sense, who's playing well, what guys are coming through, what lineups make the most sense. I think Cam has figured out a way to, put himself in the lineup. He got injured yesterday, by the way, so we'll see what's going on there. At least he had those back spasms. Cam has figured out a way to at least let JJ Redick know, if you need me, you know exactly what I do. He's not a good three-point shooter at all, so you're really depending on his defense. Occasionally we'll get a bucket here and there. What do you need? What stage of the game are you in? Who are you playing? What does that team look like? What does your offense versus their defense look like? What's your defense versus their offense look like? I think Cam's probably going to be used more in times where they need his specialty. But you just got Dorian Finney-Smith, who's shooting 44% from the three-point line. You're right. Maybe he does get less of a role. That's okay. You got a player that's better than him. So I think that's a good problem to have. All right, let's get another one here. Glenn, thank you for the super. Al, thanks for the show. Need a ball handler and a big. I don't know if the Lakers have decided to do this. I really don't have an answer to this. But I think Austin Reeves is going to start becoming more and more the ball handler. Now, listen, there are going to be some teams out there that are going to try to rough up Austin Reeves. There are going to be some teams out there that got some big guards, big wings that say, okay, I'll go out and guard Austin Reeves. Guys like Dorian Finney-Smith. So I think there's going to be kind of a combination of, all right, who's going to be the primary ball handlers? Austin Reeves, LeBron James. Clearly, obviously, you got a couple other guys that are sitting on the bench as well in Gabe Vincent. So we'll see what they do there. Maybe Shake Milton gets some opportunities in that role. We'll have to wait and see. Thank you for the super, Glenn. All right, let me get another one of these in. Northborough AES. D'Lo gone is a heck of a good start. We got enough to cover Austin Reeves and Dalton Connect on D now. Give me a burly big next, and I like our chances. By the way, I feel like there's a lot of people saying that too. A lot of people talking about, and this didn't start yesterday or today or any of that, but a real big, another big next to Anthony Davis. And maybe that's going to be the primary focus now for the Lakers. And maybe that will be the kind of the final touches for Rob Pelinka and say, all right, I did what I can. You guys go figure it out from here. But just know this. Know all these other players that are not currently available right now. Jackson Hayes hasn't played in a while. And I'm not telling you that's the answer. I'm just telling you that there's another big. Christian Wood has got great size. That's a player that hasn't been seen all season long. And I know Vando, not the same size, but great length. Also a player that will eventually, hopefully, work his way back as well. All right, great stuff on all these comments here. A lot of great comments. If you send a super, thank you for doing it. If you didn't send a super, don't worry. I'll try to get to you guys here in just a little bit. But let me welcome in Mark Medina, taking some time to join the show. What's going on, Mark? Look at us out of nowhere doing a show on a Sunday. How are you, brother?
Hey, well, the Lakers are doing a trade out of nowhere, so we have to pivot. But it's not surprising given the Brooklyn Nets. They dealt Dennis Schroeder not too long ago against Golden State. So the Lakers and Rob Pelinka were very opportunistic with getting this deal done.
Well, Mark, I appreciate it. I know I sent you a text a little bit earlier. I'm like, hey, if you're not busy, let's talk some hoops. So first off, thank you for joining the show. I'll just get your initial thoughts here. Dorian Finney-Smith coming to the Los Angeles Lakers. D'Angelo Russell going out. Let's just start first. Give me your thoughts specifically on the overall trade, and then I'll get into the individual players. Shake Milton, Dorian Finney-Smith coming in, D'Lo, Maxwell Lewis, and 3 second-rounders going out. When you saw the deal, what was your initial reaction?
I think that everything all makes sense as far as positional need. You get Dorian Finney-Smith, a really great 3-and-D player. This is a player that the Lakers have coveted for a while. And while the Lakers certainly have other 3-and-D players like a Rui Hachimura, in today's NBA, you can never have too many 3-and-D players. This obviously can make life easier for LeBron James, Anthony Davis with their spacing because of his outside shooting. Their perimeter defense has been a source of weakness this season. So that checks box number one. Box number two, D'Angelo Russell. He's a great player, but we obviously saw his role change this past season with coming off the bench. Now, J.J. Redick would always say it's not about a role change. It's not a demotion. It's about just best utilizing his skill set. But his numbers went down across the board as far as his output and his minutes. And I think to D'Angelo Russell's credit, the reason why they're able to make this trade is they gave up something in value. The fact that he has an expiring contract, he has history with the Brooklyn Nets, and on his best nights, he is still a great shooter, great playmaker. I think the other two things that we have to keep in mind is the Lakers still have their first-round picks, so that makes it even more likely that they could make another deal or two before the February 6th trade deadline. And also keep in mind this, Alan, before the season started, Rob Pelinka, when he was asked if this is a championship caliber roster, he said that this is something that he'll have a better sense of after 30 games. He pulled this trade after 31 games. Now, I think part of it is coincidence. Again, the Brooklyn Nets were already making the conclusion that they're going to start selling their pieces with the Schroeder deal. So a little bit of this is just more circumstance, but it does fall in line with his initial assessment that he'll have a better gauge on what he needs with the roster, and this is a clear indicator that they obviously need to make upgrades to help make life easier for LeBron James and Anthony Davis, and obviously stay in the playoff and contention mix.
Mark, how important is it? I think that's a great point. And by the way, the 30 games and doesn't in game 31. That's a great observation there. But how important is it that they did make a move this early? You've been around the NBA for a long time. I feel like that's a big advantage. I feel like, hey, if we find a deal that we like, let's strike on it right now, and then we'll worry about everything else as we go. But how important do you think it is that it's December 29th and they already got this deal done?
Well, it's important for two reasons.
Mark, can you hear me? Your speaker went out. Your speaker went out. Can you hear us? All right, I do not have Mark's audio here. Mark, can you hear or no? Okay, I'm gonna let Mark try to get his audio fixed there. Your audio is out, buddy. We can't hear you. So come off. Okay, wait. Maybe now we got you.
How's this?
I think now we have an echo from me.
Oh man.
Can you plug in?
Yeah, we're doing the Bluetooth tech.
Okay, don't do Bluetooth. Okay, if you can plug in directly into your laptop, and then I'll get
how's this sound here?
You're back.
Okay.
You're back now. Yeah.
Okay. The thing you're talking about, how important this is. Point number one: the Lakers did this in 2023. They got Rui Hachimura by trading Kendrick Young 3 second-round picks, and then they made that big deal. Ironically, that got D'Angelo Russell to them, as well as Jared Vanderbilt, Malik Beasley, as part of being that multi-team trade that involved getting rid of Russell Westbrook. So this isn't without precedent. I think the other thing that we have to keep in mind, specifically with this season, is the Lakers have been up and down all year. Some of it's circumstantial with injuries, some of it because it's the wild, wild west in the standings. And so I think that this is an acknowledgement that you don't want to play around waiting for another month just to see how things sort out, because that could be the difference between being third or fourth in the West versus being on the outside looking into the play-in tournament. But I think the broader point is trade deadlines and negotiations, they don't move in a linear path. So a lot of things are circumstantial. It's opportunity-based, hence, the Brooklyn Nets being real sellers. But to the Lakers' credit, they followed the old adage of when preparation meets opportunity.
That's a good way to put it. I think there's, and there's so many different angles to take here, but instantly, and this just kind of shows I don't know how to properly explain this, but the expectations from a Laker fan base, but instantly I see the move. I'm like, oh man, I like it. This is great. He's not done, right? Instantly, I'm already thinking about, well, what's the next move going to look like? Just in your opinion, the Lakers have won 6 of their last 8 games. They're 18-13 and tied with the Clippers, that 5th, 6th spot right in that area in the Western Conference. And I'm not telling you, there's obviously a lot of teams within that range. You go on a 3-game losing streak, you're probably in 10th or something along those lines. But with all that being said, I'm curious to get your thoughts on, let's say Wendell comes back and he's healthy with this team that they have right now. What do you like and what do you think is still missing?
Well, I think on paper there's a lot to like because you have LeBron James, Anthony Davis still playing mostly well. They have a lot of good positional pieces. I think the challenge, though, is the Lakers can't operate with what's on paper because there's not, even to this point, any clarity on when Jared Vanderbilt and when Christian Wood are going to be back. Jackson Hayes told ESPN's Dave McMenamin that he is targeting to return for Tuesday's game against the Cleveland Cavaliers. So if any or all of those players return, that's an obvious help in the front court, makes life easier for Anthony Davis. But I think the Lakers almost have to operate that they're never going to have a perfectly available roster. They have to assume that any and all of these players that have been dealing with injuries, as well as current healthy players, might have something. Obviously, things will fall off the rails if there are long-term injuries with LeBron and AD, but for Laker fans, so far, so good. So I think what the Lakers have evaluated here is they have still determined, based off of the entire time that Anthony Davis and LeBron James have teamed up together, that roster depth is much more effective than having a third star, with not just the Russell Westbrook experiment not working, but just the idea of what you would have to give up to get other players that might be better fits. And so one thing that we have to differentiate here is roster depth doesn't necessarily mean continuity. The Lakers have been very mindful of which roster pieces work, which ones haven't, hence the trade deadline. And so they're not going to be beholden to certain players not named LeBron James and Anthony Davis, but still has to fall under that category that they got to have roster depth to make that work. And this move, I think, further illustrates that because even though they still have their first-round picks available, they don't have a valuable trade chip in D'Angelo Russell. And so you have to assume that any of these ideas of, oh, what if the Lakers get Jimmy Butler or Brandon Ingram, Zach LaVine, all those are non-starters. And frankly, even before this trade, I would have been skeptical if that would have happened anyway, because again, the Lakers have thought roster depth's more important than that third star because of partly what they've been would have to give up to get those stars.
Man, I love what you just said there about you cannot depend how many times, and I'm sure in your coverage or your interviews that you're everywhere, and I find myself doing this a lot too. It's like, oh yeah, when Wendell comes back and Christian Wood this, there is something about what you just said. If they haven't been here yet, it doesn't mean that they're not coming, but you also probably can't depend on these guys. So any decisions that you make moving forward should not be with the assumption, well, when this player comes back, we should be good and we filled up whatever that was. You said something there that was about the roster, and you said there's a lot of things to like. If there is another move to be made, and it is to, like you said, Ingram's not coming, or Jimmy Butler or Zach LaVine or any of these guys, and you could feel free to give me a specific player that you think would be a good fit, or you could say, hey, it's this type of player or the position. Is it just what is it that sticks out to you?
Well, the most obvious thing that comes to mind is Jonas Valanciunas with the Washington Wizards because he is that burly big center. He would make life easier for Anthony Davis. AD doesn't like playing at the 5. He much prefers playing at the 4. It gives them that front court reinforcement. He's not considered a third star kind of player. Now, he is in that kind of second tier of players where what would they have to give up? But I think that's an easier conversation to be had of how do you patchwork, any combination of their different role players in their draft picks as opposed to some of those third star players that we're talking about. But I also think the other reason why this is realistic is, the Washington Wizards are expected to be sellers before the trade deadline. And even though they had Jonas Valanciunas on the roster, partly to help develop Alex Sarr, their rookie, that was the idea for the first half of the season. The second half of the season is to, have a bigger opportunity for Sarr to grow into his role. So that's the most likely scenario. But obviously, as we know at the trade deadline, there's a lot of different combinations that can happen.
Yeah, Valanciunas' name, that's one of the – it's almost like I feel like Valanciunas is becoming what Miles Turner and Buddy Hield was to the Lakers. Like, have these guys played there? I feel like those two guys were on the Lakers roster for 3 years there. Okay, keep kind of moving on here. The other, name that's not going to get talked about too much, Shake Milton. What are the Lakers getting from him being a part of the deal, and do you see some opportunities for him on this roster?
Yeah, I see some opportunities for him on the roster, not the same extent as Dorian Finney-Smith. He's a playmaker. He's going to be a backup point guard. His three-point shots, a little bit inconsistent, but I think when you're keeping in mind that Gabe Vincent, he's expected to come back after having that oblique injury that sidelined him for a good portion of yesterday's game against Sacramento. We obviously know that he's dealt with some injuries ever since he's been with the Lakers. I think the other thing is if he winds up being traded in future deals, this is a good reinforcement and still make sure they have good backcourt perimeter help. But I think, the needs that he satisfies is he's an additional playmaking guard. He can play some good defense. So that, gives them some reinforcements beyond Austin Reeves.
What do you think is, it's his
and Max Christie, by the way. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's his second stint. He had 2 stints with the Lakers. He's gone again. Just, I'm curious. I know we talked about him in the beginning, but I think there are a lot of Laker fans. I thought D'Angelo Russell was, if not the most polarizing, one of the more polarizing figures with the Lakers. And, I could tell you sitting in this seat, anytime I'm putting content together, when there was a conversation about D'Angelo Russell, people had an opinion, period. Whether you liked him, you loved him, you hated him, whatever the case was, they had an opinion on him. Tell me what you think is, what's the future for D'Angelo Russell? I know he's on an expiring contract. What's a good situation for him? What do you think his value is in the NBA moving forward? I'm just curious to get your thoughts on him.
Yeah, I think moving forward with D'Angelo Russell, because he has, the remainder of his $18 million contract and the fact that he has history with the Brooklyn Nets, I think it's about embracing the rest of the season with them and further developing as a player so that he can set himself up for his next big contract. As it pertains to D'Angelo and his 2 different stints here with the Lakers, I think the positives and the negatives, everything's true. It's just the challenge of how do you put it in its proper perspective. And I think as it pertains to his second stint with the Lakers, we have to keep in mind, I think when they made that main trade that involved D'Angelo coming back, he was really the main ignition that made sure that the Lakers hummed offensively. Obviously, everything starts with LeBron James and Anthony Davis, but D'Angelo Russell was the main player that added outside shooting, made sure that the offense was predicated on ball movement and good spacing as opposed to just dumping in to AD and LeBron and having them do everything. But as we've seen, his weaknesses would emerge, especially during the playoffs with his shooting either being really hot or really cold. Defense, he has improved as a willing defender, a team defender. I think the effort's there, but he'll be the first one to admit he's not an elite defender. And so I think what the Lakers encountered is that a lot more times the negatives outweighed the positives. But I think we also have to keep in mind one of the reasons why he was available in trade talks and why the Lakers were looking at including him in trade talks is that because he still yields a lot of interest and a lot of value for the same reason the Lakers got him in the first place. And so the Lakers concluded that, they can't necessarily bank on we're going to get the best version of D'Angelo Russell every single game. He's not that third star. He's one of many important pieces as part of the supporting cast around LeBron and AD. And because of that, he fell into that purgatory category of he's good enough to play, but not good enough to have a longer commitment. And so, that's that. I know a lot of things get, lost in translation, and it can also evolve game to game. But I think when you look at the big picture, the good vastly outweighs the bad. But because of some of the bad qualities he had, he was available. But you also have to give D'Angelo Russell credit that his skill set and his value in the market helped the Lakers make this deal in the first place.
All right, we'll start turning the page here, and I got the. It's kind of funny how quick this develops, but I get it. I completely understand it. The conversation about what the Lakers starting lineup might look like now with Dorian Finney-Smith. What do you think the Lakers? I feel like he will start. We'll see what happens. But do you think he moves into the starting lineup? If he does, who's he jumping into the starting lineup for?
Yeah, that's a very tough question because, I mean, presuming there's going to be a little bit of an integration process of just him signing his papers, getting his physical all done, everything. Once all that's out, I think everything's fluid. Obviously, LeBron and AD, when they're available, they're starting. But it seems like JJ Redick is really committing toward getting Max Christie more playing time. He's really been encouraged with Austin Reeves now that he's healthy with his increased playmaking. And Rui Hachimura, he has been inconsistent at times, but they're a real believer in what his potential is as a 3-and-D player. So I think it's really going to be about matching him at times with Rui if they want to go big, bigger as far as having more wings. And then he and Rui kind of sharing the starting duties and the reserve duties so that they can kind of stagger that wing presence accordingly, both with the first unit and the second unit. So as I'm outlining all this, I think it's going to be game to game, mostly performance driven and partly matchup driven.
Yeah, it's going to certainly give JJ Redick a lot of options and opportunities to kind of figure out, like you just said. I think one of the strengths, at least I've noticed in getting a chance so far to watch JJ Redick, he's not married to anything. Hey, whatever works, whatever's in the best interest of the team. I got no problem starting this guy for a couple games. That didn't work. Cool. Let me go with something else. I do like what you said, too, about matchups and things along those lines. So that can certainly happen as well. In the scope of the Western Conference, it's kind of funny. If I asked you this question a month ago, it would have been wildly different. The Warriors were playing much better basketball. I think a lot of people thought, there were probably some questions around, hey, is Houston really that good? Are they not good? Well, they've been hanging around. Does Denver, are they really, are they just a different team because they're lacking depth? When you look at the Western Conference right now, what are the teams that I guess you could say you feel really good about, and where did the Lakers kind of rank into that picture?
Yeah, the teams I feel really good about are basically the top 4 teams: the Thunder, the Grizzlies, the Rockets, the Mavericks. Now, that might seem like the easy, obvious answer here, just going on standings, but I'm also looking at just their roster construction as well as just the health of their teams. When you're looking at the teams 5 through 11, essentially, a lot of it has been fluid because of injuries. That includes the Lakers, obviously the Clippers with Kawhi Leonard being out. The Golden State Warriors, they've had inconsistency, but they've also had injuries. So I expect, and the Suns, obviously, they've been brilliant when Kevin Durant's on the floor, terrible when they're off of it. So when you look at the most vulnerable teams when it comes to an injury standpoint, the Clippers, Suns, and the Clippers, Suns.
New Orleans is out of the mix with all
yeah, I'm picking New Orleans out of the mix. But I would say that the Clippers and the Suns are the most vulnerable because of the injury standpoint. I think the Nuggets are vulnerable. They had some injuries, but it's most notably what you were saying. Their supporting cast is not the same as it once was, with losing key veteran players and trying to rely on younger guys. And so I think that's going to be fluid. So with that, I think the Lakers are in a better spot than those teams. They just had a lot of tough things to deal with right off the bat. Obviously, their front court depth has and still is diminished with some of their injuries, but they had a really road-heavy schedule at the beginning of the season, 2 long trips after not even playing at their home arena during preseason. All those things are behind them. Obviously, LeBron James turning 40 literally tomorrow. There's always going to be questions about any long-term or short-term injuries that come up. But I think that week-long stretch where he missed 2 games, that allowed him to hit the reset button. So what I'm getting at is when you add all these things up, I think that their runway through at least the trade deadline is going to be a lot smoother than it was at the beginning of the season. And so I think with that, they can climb into that top 4 or even beyond just because of all the different things lining up a lot better than it was at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the teams that you mentioned, we got a chance. Sacramento, we know just think about coming into the year, how we were talking about the Western Conference. New Orleans completely out of the picture. Sacramento, I mean, they just fired their coach. They've lost 6 games in a row. I got no idea what they're doing. I don't watch Golden State Warriors basketball every night, but when I do watch, they feel like they're, certainly going in the wrong direction as well. And they got a lot of question marks with that team. Denver, do they have enough depth, or, some of the role players that they lost? Houston, as great as they're playing, they've not really been there, right? So what would they look like in a playoff series? Memphis, it feels like Lakers always match up well against them. I think the point I'm trying to make, Mark, is there isn't this, well, you got no shot against these teams. I think a lot of teams can convince themselves that they got an opportunity to go up. And I'm sure that, there are teams out there saying the same about the Lakers. You played the Pistons a few days ago, and stylistically, the way the Pistons played the Lakers exposed them a little bit. Okay, be super physical with them. Reeves had 6 turnovers in that game. So I think the West of what we thought it was, I don't feel like it is. You might feel differently, but the West doesn't feel like this, this unbelievable conference that we might have thought coming into the season.
Yeah, I completely agree. I thought that the parity is still there. It's just that there's so much turbulence because of some things with roster construction as well as injuries that have made so many things fluid. I thought that, the Pelicans and the Kings would be part of that mix as far as teams that can make the plan. But with Zion Williamson being out and the Pelicans having almost injuries across the board, they're already out of the mix. The Sacramento Kings, even when you account for the fact that the West is loaded, they've underachieved ever since that playoff run or that playoff appearance 2 seasons ago when they challenged the Warriors to 7 games in the first round. But there's a lot of wild cards. Obviously, the Spurs could be in the mix with Victor Wembanyama taking another leap with his game, Chris Paul's veteran presence, same thing with Harrison Barnes. But things are always going to be delicate with them. The Minnesota Timberwolves, yes, we continue to see Anthony Edwards blossom, but there's been some, early growing pains with adjusting with that Karl Anthony Towns, making that Julius Randle fit work with Rudy Gobert. So there's just a lot of tenuous fragility around these teams that the only things that we know for sure is that the Thunder's the real deal. So are the Memphis Grizzlies. The Houston Rockets, I think that there are some question marks because of their youth, but we've seen that they are a defensive elite team because of Ime Udoka's coaching presence, and they have a good blend of veterans like Fred VanVleet, Dylan Brooks with their young players, with some really good perimeter defenders with Amon Thompson and Jabari Smith Jr. So it's no longer just a collection of young guys that don't know how to win. They have a lot of good veteran voices and a great coach that makes sure that they will be in that mix.
All right, Mark, final one I got for you, brother, and I appreciate you taking the time and joining the show. This one, a little bit more of an NBA-centric question as well. Is there a team out there that you would be, hey, watch out for this squad? What team, is there a team out there that you think is going to be really aggressive before February 6th? And I'm probably more referring to the Western Conference. And I know we've heard some of the different names or teams around guys like Jimmy Butler or guys like Brandon Ingram, whatever the case is. Is there a team out there that you think is going to be super aggressive because of maybe, like you're talking about, the parity in the West?
Well, that's a tough question to answer. I think that it's more obvious which teams are going to be sellers. The Pelicans with Brandon Ingram. I think the challenge that the Pelicans are having dating back to last summer is what is the right price tag for him, because they viewed him as a real good foundation piece, but because of second apron concerns and his first round struggles against the Thunder without Zion Williamson, suddenly the market shifted. But, you don't want to have him walk away this summer without anything. But I think that also leads a real big opportunity for people around the NBA that might not value Brandon Ingram as a second, third player, but a good piece to add on an already strong team. So if they adjust kind of the asking price, all of a sudden they might have a robust market for him. So I would pay attention to that. As it pertains to Jimmy Butler, I know that Pat Riley, with the Miami Heat, obviously release that statement, make it very publicly. Hey, we're not trading Jimmy Butler, but I think that you should use those words literally. They're not trading Jimmy Butler now, but will they trade Jimmy Butler in the future? I think Miami's expectations are really high because whether you believe with it or not, they never see themselves as a rebuilding team, and they have a good reason to think that way because they're only a few years removed from being an 8 seed that got to the NBA Finals, and so their asking price for Jimmy Butler is going to be a combination of assets and picks that make sure that they're still a playoff contending mix. But because of Jimmy Butler's age and his durability, I think that there's going to be teams that are going to be leery of doing that.
Yeah, by the way, I'm with you. The moment I hear Pat Riley come out and say, like, that's not going to happen, instantly in my head, I'm like, okay, something's going on. Something's happening here. It's just, those are so hard to believe especially when they go out of their way. I think typically when they're more silent, I think that speaks a little bit louder. I was surprised that Riley had to put out a statement on that. Mark, great stuff. I mean, for us to be sitting here on a Sunday, what NFL? I didn't know that the NFL have games today. No, but it's great to catch up with you and obviously talk about this trade and get your insight on it. So thank you very much for coming on. Looking forward to doing this again soon, but thank you for the time, brother.
Appreciate you and always love talking Lakers with you and your audience.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it. That's Mark Medina right there. Okay, we're going to keep rolling. The show will continue here. I still literally have not got a chance to look at. There's so many different comments that are coming in. Let me do this here. Let me kind of recenter everything. I want to hear from Laker fans that just have a thought on the trade. What do you think of Dorian Finney-Smith, and how do you think he's going to help the Los Angeles Lakers? So whatever, I can't go back in the comments. There's just too many comments here, but I'll start it right now. Your thoughts on the Dorian Finney-Smith signing for the Lakers? How do you like his fit? What do you guys think from a perspective of, is he a starter? Is he not a starter? You could start throwing those comments in, and then I'll start getting to some of that as well. There are a lot of, I've kind of said this before. I've said that there are players that the Lakers have had, players that are on this roster, players that are on this team, that there's you kind of look at them and you start figuring out, okay, which guys do you feel like when we get to the playoffs, I want that guy closing out a game, or I can depend or rely on that player because of his style of play. It makes me think, you kind of go back and you think of some of those championship teams that the Lakers had over the years. Maybe you were a guy like, in my era when I'm watching Shaq and Kobe, how important was Ori Fisher and Rick Fox? Or kind of go a little bit further down, guys like Brian Shaw, guys like, you go down the list. Devin George had moments and opportunities. Sasha had opportunities a little bit, further on. I want to throw in Meta, but Meta was such a key piece and everybody knew how good he was going to be. You got to have players that are role players that can step up. I think Dorian Finney-Smith is, I think he's a guy that you can look at and depend on in the playoffs. So that's what I think gets me excited about him. Now we'll see, and we got a long way to go. We're only 31 games into the season, but I think he's going to be a player that 100% is going to have an effect on this Lakers roster. All right, let's see what we got here. I would have traded AR and Lewis. Interesting. Yeah, I Austin Reeves, I will tell you right now, is got to be one of the most valuable contracts in the NBA. Do you guys know that he's under contract this year plus 2 more years? And I think it's 13, 14, and 15 million a year. That's nothing in the NBA. That is nothing in the league. And oh, by the way, he's a damn good player, and I think much more reliable than D'Angelo Russell was. So I don't see that at all. If other people see that way, feel free to, let me know. All right, here's one here. Great trade. Let me see a couple more here. Man, I miss Meta World Peace. His post-championship pressure is literally one of his favorites. Okay, let's see what else we got here. D'Lo is just a straight shooter, always has been. DFS has more tools. First off, listen, how crazy is this? Dorian Finney-Smith, I said at the beginning of the show, 40%, 44% from the three-point line. So not only is he a phenomenal defender, a guy that will kind of get in your chest, but he's also a player that can hit threes. It's literally the definition of a 3-and-D player. They need to start DFS over Rui. That's going to be, by the way, that's going to be a lot of the conversation moving forward. The conversation moving forward is going to be, well, what does your starting lineup look like now? All right, let me get a couple more of these in here. Can we get LaVine still? No. I think the answer to that is no. I think the only way you were going to get Zach LaVine is if you were including D'Lo's contract in that deal, plus other contracts. So no, to answer that question. Let's see what else we got here. A lot of comments coming in, so I'm trying to do my best here to kind of follow this as we go. Is Reeves still the third best Laker? Yeah, I think he is. Did you guys see his night last night? He had 26 and 16. I think he's still the third best Laker. If they're going to go for depth, and that's going to be kind of the way they build this team now, they still got to go get more depth. There still has to be, more depth on this Lakers roster. So, and DFS he's a role player. The guy is not, I don't think he's going to be coming in having 25 a night or anything along those lines. DFS helps on the perimeter, can make threes. All right, let's see what else we got here. Addition by subtraction. D'Lo had such a carelessness on defense, sucked the life out of the team. Appreciate the super there. Yeah, I think there's something to that. I think there was. Listen, I just wanted let the man move on too. This is not a player that's part of the Lakers' future. Let's find somebody that we think, at least through the rest of this season, Dorian Finney-Smith, whether he's a Laker moving forward or not, at least you have a player that knows, okay, I'm here for a specific reason, and it's this initial playoff run. Thank you for the super there, Sheed. Let's get another one in here. Moises, it's a good trade because the move makes sense. Redick loves Dodo. D'Lo drove JJ mad. Good work, Slee. I think at the end of the day, if JJ Redick, if his philosophy is going to be on the defensive side, well, you're never going to put defense and D'Angelo Russell in the same sentence. Okay, so that's not going to work out there. So this definitely falls more along those lines. Moses, I appreciate the super. Thank you for joining the show. I want to go back to something that I talked about a little bit earlier, and then we'll keep rolling here on the show. We'll see how much longer we go. We'll just keep going until we decide it's done. I'm going to go back to praising Pelinka here for a quick second for a couple of different reasons. By the way, if you're on the show here and you've been hanging out, thank you very, very much for doing so. If you guys don't mind, please subscribe to the channel. That's all I ask for the channel. For now, there's other things, eventually I'll have memberships and all that other great stuff. But if you could subscribe to the channel, I greatly appreciate it. If you know me from my time over at 710 ESPN, I'm no longer with 710. I'm 100% independent now on YouTube. Obviously doing the show here. So if you can subscribe, it'd be greatly appreciated. Let's go back to Pelinka here for a quick second. Guys, Pelinka gets a lot. I had a lot of content here over this last 30 days talking about Rob Pelinka and talking about how he's got to do more. Talking about where is that trade for the Lakers? Where is that move that we can all look at? And I actually, as soon as last night I was talking about this after the Lakers beat the Kings. I spent time saying, listen, let's not pretend like Rob Pelinka has done nothing, but we will really gauge Rob Pelinka over these next couple of months. That's when you could really have an opinion on Rob Pelinka, because Pelinka was, number one, he was the player that helped put together a championship roster in the bubble. You want to give him credit for that or not? I'm going to give him credit for that. The only reason why that roster didn't work the following year was because Anthony Davis got injured. So you never got to see Marc Gasol, Montrezl Harrell, Dennis Schroeder. We never got to see that work because Anthony Davis got injured when the Lakers were up 2-1 against the Phoenix Suns. And once he got injured, that's it. The season was over. The Russell Westbrook trade, you could put as much of that on his shoulders as you want to. But if you're going to put it on his shoulders, you got to put it on LeBron's shoulders too. You got to put it on, I'm sure Anthony Davis had to say. It was not just on Rob Pelinka. There was a lot of factors there. He made good trades when he got rid of Russell Westbrook and then hasn't made a move since. So a lot of the criticism on Rob Pelinka was like, hey, are you going to do something or are you not? He made a move. And he made a move for a player that just feels like he's the right player for this Lakers team. So, and there's a lot of time left to go improve the roster. So whether it's Jonas Valanciunas that the Lakers end up with, whether it's a different type of player that the Lakers end up, whoever the hell they end up with, I think we all know this cannot be the final move for the Lakers if the goal is to go on a deep championship run. But I think the Lakers are much better today. Maybe much better is a little aggressive. I think the Lakers are better today than they were yesterday. So that's the only thing that I'm really paying attention to at this point. Okay, let me get a couple more comments here. Andre Miller, the former basketball player. DFS is a good pickup. All right, let me find this here real quick so I could highlight it. DFS is a good pickup, but for us, at full health, he's slightly redundant. We need a center badly. If AD gets hurt, we're 13th place overnight. Let me tell you something. If AD gets hurt, the season's over. So it doesn't matter where they go. And even if you got a good backup center, pick your center. Walker Kessler, Jonas Valanciunas, pick whoever you want. If Anthony Davis gets hurt, you're in 13th either way. Not literally, but you know what I'm talking about. You're not going to make a run if Anthony Davis got injured. So I don't think that part really matters. I don't think that part I think you need a backup center because you want another guy similar to when the Lakers went on that deep championship run because you had Dwight Howard, because you had JaVale McGee, because you had other bigs in there. And clearly that's what Anthony Davis prefers. That's what he wants. That's what he'd prefer to play with. Have another kind of a bruiser and a banger in there. You want it for those reasons. You don't want it because if AD gets injured, you have a backup center. If AD gets injured, then we might as well cancel this show as well. There's just no real reason to have it because they wouldn't be competing for an NBA championship. That's, I think, the point that I'd be trying to make here. All right, let's get another one of these in here. Andre, by the way, thank you for the super. Nick, hallelujah. I won't have to see D'Lo Reeves backcourt anymore. I wish we could have got a center like Kelly Olynyk next to AD. There's still time. And I think that's probably the point that I care about the most. There's still time. They still have an opportunity to go out there to go make another move. Yeah, that backcourt of D'Lo and, D'Angelo Russell and Austin Reeves defensively, it's a lot better now because who'd you put in there? You got Max Christie, and Max Christie is starting to get comfortable and starting to kind of show his value on this Lakers team. Okay, flip it the other way. All right, if you want DFS in the starting lineup, you have that option. If there's other players, you kind of have now more opportunities. I mean, don't forget, there was a time was Austin Reeves and Dalton Connect. That's also a terrible defensive backcourt. So clearly the Lakers have made their adjustments here. Okay, a couple more comments, and then we're going to get the hell out of here. Back on tomorrow morning, by the way, at 8 a.m. I will have Trevor on tomorrow, Trevor Lane of Lakers Nation. So we're going to continue to have the conversation. Had to obviously do this today. Phenomenal numbers. So I appreciate you guys tuning in. I know I wasn't able to go live right when the trade happened, but here we are a few hours later, able to go live, and we still got, obviously a lot of people that are hanging out. So appreciate all the love of joining the show here. Okay, let's see a couple more comments, and then we're going to call it a day. AR should not be considered your third option. That should tell you how bad the roster is. He is more like a fifth option. Okay, the roster is not terrible here. Let's stop here for a quick second. They're 18 and 13. They've been missing some guys, and they're fifth place in the Western Conference. Tell me how that's terrible. I don't think that's terrible. I mean, you might have a great YouTube name, but I don't understand where your angle is here, Pork Rinds. I know what you're saying. What you're saying, and I've said this before as well. AR cannot be your third best player, and you're a true championship contender. I've said that before. That's come out of my mouth. But you're making it sound like the Lakers are 11th in the Western Conference and aren't going to make the playoffs. Plow, what should Slee call his membership tiers? It's a good question there. If anybody has any suggestions, AlanSlewa@gmail.com. Send me a freaking email. I'll take a look at it. All right, a few more, and then we're done. Okay, listen. Sometimes I don't know. There's so many comments coming in. Okay? How the hell am I supposed to know? Every time I think there's something good out there, then I'm live. It's not like I recorded this damn thing. All right, a couple more, and then we're done. Let's see what else we got here. Austin Reeves haters are so whack. By the way, I actually genuinely don't know what the hate would be on Austin Reeves. What would the hate be on Austin Reeves? What is this? The guy is making a lot less than a lot of other players in the NBA, and he produces almost every single night. Are there some times he gets checked by the Detroit Pistons and has 6 turnovers? Sure. But I think he's fine either way. I don't think there should be hate towards him. All right, my people. Listen, I really appreciate you guys all hanging out. A lot of people joined this show today, and I'm glad that I was able to do it and make it happen. And really, really good conversation. Lakers obviously make a big-time move. They get Dorian Finney-Smith. I know we didn't talk much about Shake Milton, but to be honest with you, I'm going to have to see his game more to really have an opinion on it. I'm just reading from what some of these other articles had said out there. But the bottom line is D'Angelo Russell, no longer a Los Angeles Laker. And the Lakers got tougher, grittier, a solid three-point shooter in Dorian Finney-Smith, and we're going to see what happens from there. Back on tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. Please subscribe to the channel. Thank you for hanging out for over an hour. Thank you for being here, and we'll get back with you guys tomorrow. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.